The cool thing about the NFL draft is that no matter where you are, no matter where you play, ultimately, if you can play, they will find you. You'll get your chance. To me, nobody ever slips through the cracks at the end of the day if they can play. Some guys have a more difficult and challenging path to the NFL. Sometimes guys have to wait till later on in their uh, 20s to really get that opportunity. Somebody I think of like that is a Cameron Wake, a guy that had to go to the CFL and dominate for a period of time. But when he finally got to the NFL, he made the most of his opportunity. At the end of the day, even if he slipped through the cracks initially, he became a player. He became a real player. And at the end of the day, he became a Pro Bowl type of guy at the NFL level. Point is, if he could play, eventually he was found. And I look at a guy like Larry Ogunjobi from Charlotte. You're talking about a program had a bunch of losing seasons, not really known for producing NFL talent, and really lacks name recognition and so many other things. But if a guy can play, people will find you. And so often we look for the stars and the superstars in the NFL draft. A lot of times, the NFL draft, as much as anything, is about finding just decent starters, quality backups and reserves, versatile type of guys, or specialist guys that fill a specific role and do their role very well. Never going to be superstars, but they can have an impact in terms of what they can do. When I look at Ogunjobi, that's the type of guy that I envision him as. Guy at 6'3", 305 pounds. He can hold up in the middle. Not a very explosive athlete, so I don't envision a guy with high pass rush or sack potential at the NFL level. Being in large part because of that lack of burst and explosiveness, but also too not a lot of refinement in terms of his pass rush moves. It would take a ton of work to get him there. Just not a guy that seems naturally gifted as a pass rusher, but a guy that is incredibly strong. A guy that can hold up really well at the point of attack. A guy that can bull rush people. He can blow through people, and that ultimately is going to be his calling card at the NFL level. Guy that's really, really strong, plays with pretty good pad level to go with that strength. It really helps him as a run defender. This is a guy that I look at him on film and I feel like he's a nose, even though he's 6'3", 305 pounds, he projects more as a nose tackle type or, the bigger defensive tackle in a 4-3 type of guy. This is, again, he's never going to be a guy that I envision penetrating and getting a bunch of sacks and creating a lot of pressure. He's not a guy that I envision having huge tackle for loss type of numbers, but he is a guy that I can envision still being destructive in the middle of the defensive line because he is so strong. He could give a lot of problems to interior linemen at the NFL level to where he commands some double teams and he fills that, like I said, traditional nose tackle type of role. Where it's not just about the plays that he makes, it's about what he does that allows others to be able to make plays. And when you look at him on film, this is the type of guy that I envision him as. A guy that is solid in several areas. I was impressed. I thought he was adequate in terms of shedding blocks. Now, granted, a lot of that comes from just trying to plow through people, but he's strong enough where he can plow through people and get off blocks that way. It'd be nice if he found some other ways to consistently be able to shed blocks, but that's a good start and not something that everybody could do coming into the NFL level. Got okay football instincts, not great, but he might not need to have a ton of them based off of the type of role he might have at the NFL level. A guy that puts forth decent effort, not a ton of effort in pursuit, but generally will play snap to whistle. But a guy that you really look like it's reliable, that will play every game. You read what his Charlotte coaches had to say about him, talk about how he was a real pillar and bedrock for that program, a real foundation piece for them, and did so many wonderful things on the field, in the locker room, and on the practice field, and so on. He was one of those type of guys. And when I watch Ogunjobi on film, that's kind of what I see. Is one of those guys that's a role player, but an effective role player. The type of guy that is consistent, reliable. Fans might always be looking for a replacement for him because they want somebody more spectacular, but sometimes you overlook the fact that he's a solid football player. Now, Bengals fans will sit there and say, well, that sounds like you're describing D'Amato Pecco, except he sucks. And I'll say, no, I'm not describing Pecco because I agree he sucked for about 8 years. When I look at Ogunjobi, who he reminds me of somebody from last year's draft, which is Jarran Reed from Alabama. He was a guy with limited pass rush upside, but similar size, decent strength, and played hard and really, really held up well against the run. And you envision him being a type of run stopper who maybe got 2 or 3 hustle sacks in the course of a year. When I look at Larry Ogunjobi, that's a similar type of guy that I see. You know, Jarran Reed ultimately got taken in the tail end of round number 2. That to me is where his draft range should begin in this draft, somewhere between late round 2 to mid-late round 3. He's a round 3 type of talent to me, but again, that's okay. Not everybody has to be a superstar to have a nice, productive NFL career and make some nice NFL money. And when you look at a guy like Ogunjobi, even in today's NFL where teams are sitting there and throwing so often and the running game is somewhat de-emphasized, and so many teams play the spread so often, and so many defenses want to be able to get as many pass rushers on the field as possible. You still need guys like this on first and second down. You need these type of guys in third and fourth down, short yardage, and goal line type of situations. These are the guys, maybe they only play 60% of the time, so they don't have first round, even I don't think second round value. But again, they're the type of guys that don't have a ton of bust factor to them, the guys that you should feel are somewhat reliable and will have some type of NFL career. And when I look at Larry Ogunjobi, I see Jarran Reed, I see a guy that can be a somewhat productive, if not reliable, NFL player for several years.